The Boogeyman sees Rob Savage direct an adaptation of Stephen King's 1973 short story of the same name, adapted for the screen by Mark Heyman, who was a writer on Black Swan, and A Quiet Place writing duo Brian Woods and Scott Beck. The movie follows the Harper family in the wake of a family tragedy. We see therapist father Will, who's not dealing with his wife's death, angsty teen Sadie, who's getting picked on at school whenever someone isn't reminding her of the death of her mother, and you've got youngest child Sawyer, who's afraid of monsters in the dark, but is constantly told that it's all in her head. They're all kind of in a comfortably numb state when we meet them in their grief and coping by not coping, essentially, until one day Lester arrives in Will's home office out of the blue looking to get some therapy. His children died one by one in a short space of time, which he was suspected of doing, but he explains to Will that what actually killed them is the thing that comes for your kids when you're not paying attention to them. Sure enough, it isn't long before that same thing starts to come for the Harpers. The cast is sneakily great for the Boogeyman, with Sophie Thatcher starting to profit from her excellent run on Yellow Jackets as Teen Nat with a leading role here, while we have Chris Messina and David Dastmalchian also lending their recognition and abilities to make this a cut above the run-of-the-mill jump scare horror that we're all used to. The acting is by far the best aspect of this, and it makes it much, much better than it probably deserved to be just on the page alone. I also wasn't surprised to discover after seeing the movie that it shares the lineage with A Quiet Place. There's a lot of shared themes, and a lot of the action relies on similar premises. The main monster kind of looks like and has very similar mannerisms to those in A Quiet Place as well, which, for better or worse, I don't know if I loved. I found it kind of odd because, like, what is a boogeyman at the end of the day? I guess I've never kind of fleshed out that thought in my head and kind of put an image on it, but I never really saw it as kind of looking and behaving like a kind of semi-invincible Resident Evil rabbit dog, but that's kind of what it looks like, and it's just kind of strange. It isn't terrible horror by any means. If you like the kind of what I call shit horror, but again, like I realize a lot of people don't see it as shit. If you like your bog standard focus group approved jump scare based horror like The Conjuring, you may love this movie, and a lot of people do. I understand, even if it's not my cup of tea specifically. Rob Savage's set pieces are quite creative and fun at times. Granted, they're very jarring because you've got really good actors trying to convincingly tug on your heartstrings and tell a hard hitting story about the natures of grief and the dangers of trying to outrun it on one hand, and then you're doing cheesy but exciting sequences based around like light switches switching on and off again, and wondering why this seemingly gainfully employed therapist doesn't keep a big light or two on if it's going to cause that much trouble like and trauma for his struggling family. But if you can switch your brain off, there's some fun to be had, especially once it gets out of the obligatory tension building early phase of the movie, where it goes kind of really, really quiet and then it goes really loud again out of nowhere until, oh wait, it was actually just something perfectly normal after all. The jump scares are also quite telegraphed for me. I think it was twice the movie managed to successfully lull me in, but even then, if I don't really care about the characters getting attacked, you can be as loud and as jarring as you want, and I'll still sit there more often than not like, yeah, just kill them, it's fine, like I don't really mind. The movie's main problem isn't that it's particularly bad at anything it does, it just can't really pick a lane for long enough to be actually, kind of good either. The Boogeyman is a pretty obvious allegory for a failure to cope with grief, but that's already been done fairly recently and also very effectively by the Babadook. And the problem is, apart from horror obsessives, I don't think there's much intersection between people who like that kind of The Conjuring style jump scare based horror and the more psychological mindfuck horror like the Babadook. If you like The Conjuring, you think psychological horrors make no sense once they get into the business end, because again, you're retreating to an elevated state of kind of allegory and metaphor and so on. And again, like kind of if you're looking at it as a purely scary, frightening thing and reading into it very literally, it's going to take you out of the moment. But if you like the Babadook and you like that metaphor and you like that allegory, you're a total snob then looking down at people who scream at loud noises, and then that doesn't kind of play either. And case in point, when this got to the business end, I saw a couple of people walk out of the screening that I was in, and personally I felt that was a little harsh, but also it's kind of an inevitable consequence of when people are there and they kind of want to switch their brains off, and then all of a sudden, after telling them that that's what this movie is for, you're then like, no, you need to think about this now. And again, they were like, I'm just not having it, and I'm out. And this wasn't bad, but it was like a much louder remix of the Babadook that screamed a metaphor in your face. If you find yourself standing at a cinema unsure of what to watch and you enjoy horror, you probably shouldn't and won't hate this, but the story has been done much better, so don't go out of your way to see it either. later.